Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Pisgah Podcast.
Thank you for listening to Pisgah. We are your host. I'm Drew, that's Mangler, and we are coming to you live from the gate on Yellow Gap Road that's just begging to be reopened.
Which side? Because both are closed and begging to be reopened.
Yeah, open that wall up. But yeah, we have a lot to talk about this week, so let's jump right in. What do we have in the news this week?
Man, this week there's kind of a lot of cool stuff going on. Maxxis dropped a new Minion Shorty, which probably is not the most ideal Pisgah tire, but probably for some of the natural lines at Canuga, it could be a really ripping, grippy tire.
It looks like it's got some potential use in the area. But yeah, speaking of tires, Pinkbike did a tire pressure informative video, which I think is pretty good to watch. Western North Carolina zones and climates definitely call for various tire pressures, ride forest roads on higher pressures, and adjust for the trail. I, for one, am a fan of ambient plus tire insert at my lightweight.
That's something that I've been needing to venture onto and test the waters on, is, put some tire inserts in. Speaking of tire inserts and people that probably smash the hell out of some tires, I saw some Instagram clips of the East Coast Enduro King, Mr. Richie Rude, absolutely shredding Canuga. One thing that I'm really psyched about that is to see people of his caliber coming down to our neck of the woods to ride. That speaks, tons about how good we have trails here. And also, Pivot has introduced the new Trail 429 today, which to me seems like a great Western North Carolina all-around bike. Maybe not a super rowdy bike, but still a good all-around riding bike. And to get the deets on this new whip, I got Pisgah Podcast fan, Toyota aficionado, and owner of South Main Cycles down in Belmont in the Piedmont area, Mills Davis, to give us a rundown on this new bike. Mills, thanks for coming on the show. I reached out to you because you are a Pivot dealer, and today Pivot released a new bike into the world. Tell me about what shop you have, where it's at, and then what's this new bike about?
Well, first of all, Mangler, thanks for having me, dude.
Of course.
Dreams are finally coming true. Yeah, I've got a bicycle shop down in Belmont, North Carolina, just before you get to Charlotte, if you're coming from the west. We became a Pivot dealer pretty much upon my onboarding when I was still partnered with the former owner whom I bought the shop from. Yeah, pretty much immediately, just because Pivot was kind of an up-and-coming brand, and I was at another Pivot dealership out on the West Coast, and worked with a bunch of nerds there that just, wouldn't shut up about Pivot and how awesome Pivot was, and this, that, and the other. And after I got to work with them a few times and build a couple up, I was sold on them as well. So, yeah, we've been selling Pivot for a while, and they've come a long way, and the progression of their bikes seems to be exponential as of the past few years. So they did indeed drop a pretty awesome bike. Yeah, we're really excited about it.
So tell me about this new bike. What do we got?
So we have a quote-unquote do-it-all bicycle, basically a Reformation, I guess the third iteration of their kind of mid-travel trail bike they've always kind of had in their lineup. 140 travel, 120 travel in the rear, respectively, trail bike from Pivot. And Pivot had a 429 Trail, which was a 130 mil travel bike, and I believe the rear travel was like 115. And
that sounds right.
Yeah, that was my favorite bike. I got to ride that when it first dropped in Interbike in Vegas. I forget what year, and that was the holy grail of trail bikes, especially for around here. It climbed really well, it descended really well. It was a really playful bike. Shortly thereafter, they released their Trail 429, which was what we knew up until this morning. I felt like that bike was maybe a placeholder or stepping stone to get to the bike that I believe this new one is, if you will. It was a little heavy. It was a little cumbersome. It had some technological, I guess, implementations that seemed maybe a little irrelevant for that particular bike. It was heavy and it just, it didn't really climb that much better than the Switchblade, and it definitely didn't descend nearly as well. So I had one
It was a hard bike to have in the lineup.
It really was, especially for me, man. I jumped all over it as soon as it came out, and I didn't have it for very long. It just didn't speak to me.
So how do you see the improvements in the new Trail 429?
Well, they've done everything that they've done to both the Mach 6 as well as the Switchblade. That vertical implementation of the shock, the retaining of, obviously, DW Link, which is what they're famous for. The elongation of both the, with the reach, the slackening of the head tube, the steepening of the seat tube. I think they've done everything that the industry has kind of commanded they do, but I think they've done also, by doing that, made a more relevant and more fun to ride bike.
How do you see this bike lining up with your customer base at South Main Cycles?
Well, again, that's why I keep tripping over my own words, because I am kind of excited, trying to, I guess, kind of process, I guess, the importance of this bike in Pivot's lineup as it relates to my customer base. I think it's the bike that we've been waiting on. We almost sold so many Trail 429s of the previous iteration, but people would come ride them and they'd be like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to get a Yeti instead." And there were complaints like the bike is heavy for its travel. The bike isn't as plush. It doesn't pedal as well as I expected it to. A lot of things which were kind of uncharacteristic for Pivot. And I think, again, that a lot of these issues were remedied with this, significant facelift that it got. So it's almost crazy that it still bears the name that the last model did,
Yeah. Talk to me about the local trails that your customers are mostly riding for their, quote, home trails.
Man, it's a tough one because we're all dreamers, right? We all like to pretend like we ride Pisgah, like you lucky ducks, 99% of the time. So everybody's kitting themselves out and getting decked out bike-wise to go hit their one Trace Ridge lap or their Bennett Gap lap for the year. So around here, I think a lot of our customers are secretly preparing themselves for kind of rolling, undulating, single track, a lot of pedaling, a lot of descending, but a lot of both those things in the span of miles, right?
Yeah.
So a bunch of up down. So a bike that is going to be as responsive pedaling wise and versatile descending wise. Like this one is a really good thing.
What's your personal bike that you're riding right now?
Yeah, Switchblade. So I departed from the former Trail 429 and got a Switchblade, the V1.5 as they would call it, which is essentially the first generation Switchblade frame with all the parts they're putting on the current Switchblade. So Shimano 12-speed, 44mm offset fork, and DPX2 shock. I was riding one of those up until like 4 days ago when I took delivery of a Switchblade V2 frame set that everything is going to be now transplanted onto. So long story short, to answer your question, a Switchblade V2.
Right on. So talk to me about some of the numbers on this Trail 429. What are some of the things that jump out to you that kind of, get that needle bouncing a little bit of your excitement that you so eloquently are showing me?
Yeah, man. So I think the biggest thing that's going to jump out at me, because when I kind of try to look and process these numbers, and you've got nearly an inch less in standover in this new bike. You've got almost an inch longer wheelbase. Are those things that are really perceivable in actual riding execution? Maybe not. I think like a half-inch reach, stretched out a little bit more. But the biggest number that hits me, man, is like, the frame's nearly a pound lighter from the
Oh,
last
wow.
model. And we can talk about these geometry variables. I would say the slightly slacker head tube and the slightly steeper seat tube by half a degree, cool. But the weight difference is huge, and again, the implementation of the shock and the DW link, and that going to a vertical position, and the shock going to a trunnion mount style rather than that standard eyelet mount, I think is gonna be what differentiates this bike from the last one in the biggest way.
Now, this bike has a low and high setting, is that correct?
It does, yeah. Man, how could I forget? Yeah, the flip chip, dude. The options are endless, right?
And you can better put a water bottle in it now.
Exactly, all sizes too. From the little guys to the big guys, everybody gets a bottle in the main triangle, which is.
Will the little triangle be able to support Pivot's little tool thing that they're doing on the bottom side of the top tube?
Dude, that's such a good question. You would think a guy in my shoes, even though I'm not wearing shoes right now, should know the answer to that question.
I think it should.
I would hope. I do know that every frame does get its own kind of specific layup. So it would be clumsy of me to say that every frame is going to have those two, I guess, eyelets or bosses under the top tube. But I'm nearly positive that it does.
And you hinted earlier that your shop has some of these incoming, hopefully soon.
Yes, we absolutely do. I got a visit from our rep today on a totally separate matter. He was asking me if I wanted to take deliveries of these bikes right this second, despite there not being any shifters to go with them. So Shimano is we got some Shimano builds on the way, and we are missing XT 12-speed shifters. So
what you're saying is South Main Cycle is going to have a custom single-speed pivot Trail 429.
Exactly. We're gonna come up with a whole new shifting mechanism. That's he suggested SLX, but I don't think the pivot fanboy would appreciate the deviation from the excellent XT or XTR stuff.
I don't disagree with you. Well, Mills, dude, thanks for coming on and doing some bike nerd stuff with us. We really appreciate it. And, dude, weather's getting nicer, so hopefully I can lure you up to the mountains in your cute little Toyota van.
Dude, I absolutely can't wait to take you up on that.
Awesome. Well, dude, thanks a lot, and hopefully I'll be seeing you soon.
Mangler, thanks for having me, buddy.
Man, so the 429's updates are pretty standard for a bike trying to maintain its already established market share. I definitely think it's a good all-arounder for this general area.
Yeah, this general area and, some of the Piedmont areas too. As a short travel bike fan, I'm psyched to see another company pushing a good, I'm going to call it a downcountry plus bike. It ain't all about plowing trails, and another positive about not plowing trails is the abuse your bike takes from smashing stuff. It doesn't wreak havoc and lead you to spending more wrench time fixing it. That is, unless you have like a heavy monster truck bike.
Yeah, and speaking of plowing trails and the abuse it gives to your bike, I got a little rant here. As a lifetime bicycle tech, I've got to tell you, two of the largest time sucks that I've come to realize come from opposite ends of the spectrum. You get those small, easy-to-fix tasks that wind up at the bench, and then on the other hand, you got something complex that some hero tried to fix on their back porch, possibly losing parts and erasing any clues that might help you troubleshoot what could be wrong.
Well, Drew, you have an interesting perspective on this because you work in the service department within the mountain bike industry, whereas like myself, I'm a garage bike mechanic. But I do see where you're coming from. So where do you think the line is drawn between when to visit the bike shop or to dive in and get a RA from the service department and when you should just take the job on yourself?
Well, I don't think there's a hard line to be drawn because we all have different levels of dexterity with tools and mechanical knowledge, but I think there are a few things that can help the individual figure it out. Like, does it require special tools or materials? Does it require special education? You can always check the manufacturer's website, and some parts and subassemblies just aren't meant to be serviced. And the internet's awesome. You got videos for everything these days. So just look for the instructional videos and just see if you have the aptitude before you crack it open with a wrench.
So my deal with bike mechanicking and basic maintenance is I have a background in being a bike mechanic. Also from banging on a BMX bike with a hammer and a nail to break chain link. So I've got kind of a weird one there. But there are certain things that I'm probably just going to leave alone. And it's mainly because if it's something that I don't do frequently enough to be competent at, I don't want to go down that road and risk messing something up. Like, for instance, I suck at bleeding brakes. I don't do it enough to get good at it. I have a brake bleeding kit, and I've maybe used it once, but that's just something that the bike shop is going to be better and more efficient at. And also I have a couple of friends that would do it for me as well. But it's never the wrong choice to take your bike to the shop, but be gracious with your shop and know your limits. Also, it's probably a good idea to call ahead and check and see what their service schedule looks like. We're still kind of in a pandemic, and bike shops are getting hammered with service requests. So, take that as of note.
Yeah, good call. For what it's worth, there's nothing wrong with trying to save a dollar, but I've seen more people that are penny wise and dollars dumb when they tried to take on a bike task of their own. So it's good to know what you're getting into. And if you're looking for some bike education and what to do when it comes to working on your bike, we have a good interview with Jenny Kallista of Appalachian Bicycle Institute and the current president of the Professional Bicycle Mechanic Association.
So I am Jenny Kallista, and I am a bicycle mechanic by profession originally, but I have turned into an instructor. So I started a school for bicycle mechanics called Appalachian Bicycle Institute. Started it back in 2010, and that was after a number of years, many years actually, of teaching bicycle maintenance classes at bike shops. So I kind of discovered that I have a skill for teaching. At least that's what all my students tell me. And it's been a wonderful experience. I started it while still working at a shop, kind of trying to grow the school in a way that, one, would show me whether or not it was something I could do as a living, and just kind of see how it would go. And then within 4 years or so, it turned into my full-time thing. So that's what I do professionally, is run my school and teach students from all over the world now. I've had some students from overseas and up in Canada and whatnot. And I also helped start a professional organization for bicycle mechanics. So it's the Professional Bicycle Mechanics Association, the PBMA for short. So I served on the board for the last 4 years and was tapped to take over for the president, who, after 4 years of feeling like it was somewhat of a thankless job in some ways and a difficult job, needed to focus on his own stuff. So I was sort of the obvious next successor for that. So that's who I am.
It sounds like maybe the motivation to get Appalachian Bicycle Institute started was because you were already doing similar classes through a shop.
Yeah, because I was already teaching bicycle mechanics and just maintenance classes, right? But it was a great opportunity that the shop offered for any mechanic, really. To stay after work, in the after hours, to teach these clinics. And a number of, other mechanics had done it here and there, but nobody had done it for a while. And so they were like, hey, are you interested? And I was like, sure, I'll try it. And the first class went so well, and I enjoyed it so much. And I was like, yeah, I guess I'll just kind of keep doing this. Nobody else really wanted to do it, so I did it for 6.5 years at the shop that I worked at here locally in town, Liberty Bikes. Great shop owned by two wonderful people, the Nixes. And it was a nice little racket because it was a great way to make some extra money. We were able to keep the dollars that the participants paid. It was just $35 and 2-night, 2-parter kind of deal. And I kind of made up my own little curriculum, and like kind of what would I want to learn if I was a budding, cyclist or just wanting to be a little bit more self-reliant kind of thing. So, even though there were some days where I didn't really want to stick around after working all day on bikes and then teach people, it always left me elated at the end of the night. It was usually around 9 o'clock-ish or whatever, when I would be walking back to my car. It was dark, the parking lot empty, and I just had this feeling of exhilaration that I made all these people happy with learning stuff and light bulbs going off over their heads and stuff. And it was just incredibly satisfying. So, over the years of doing that, the idea that maybe this was something I could pursue in some other way started percolating in my head. And I guess not in small part because one of my very best friends was the head instructor at Barnett Bicycle Institute for many years. She was there for 14 years. And I know she found it really satisfying, although she was a bit of a harsher teacher, I think, than I feel like I am. I wish she had to put up with a lot of sexism and, a lot of students that kind of were surprised when they showed up to this big school that there was a female instructor, because it's a pretty male-dominated industry just in general, So I tend to take a softer approach, I guess. And I also I have like endless patience. And I think that's what really is like the main requirement of being a good instructor is you have to be incredibly patient and creative with how to teach, because sometimes people, don't quite understand. And so you explain it another way. And if they still don't understand, then you have to explain it yet another way or another way, So,
Sure.
So it's fun to have that challenge of having students, kind of demand more from me, keeps it interesting,
Yeah.
But by now I feel like just about anything that gets thrown my way, I've got something already ready for it.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely get the, at the end of a day, not wanting to talk about bikes anymore after you've been handling them all day.
Right.
I've even got those friends, too, that, will call and ask tech stuff, and I'm like, let's ride these things instead of talk about them right now. I've been doing this all day.
Totally, yeah.
But still, when it's
Yeah.
what you do, and it's what you do, and you know it better than other people, it's kind of gratifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And easy, too, right? Like it said, if you can't explain something easily, then you don't really understand it yourself.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
How many people are in a class at one time?
Oh, the classes are tiny. Yeah. I only have 4 students at a time. And, that's by design from the years that I taught those maintenance classes. Like I usually had 6 students for those classes. And I mean, they were pretty much always full. Like they were in demand. And sometimes there were so many people that were like, can you just squeeze me in? And I would take 8 students on occasion. And that is definitely way too much. And so when I started the school and like kind of plotted out the space that I have in my shop, I have a 1,000-square-foot building on my property where the school lives, just kind of like mapping out space and just kind of feeling like, what would I be comfortable with? And I thought, well, 4 students kind of seems perfect. And I thought maybe if I wanted to expand, I could or whatever. But at this point, the 4 has worked out perfectly. And the students love it. They really love it when they find out that, oh, there's only going to be 3 other students.
Yeah.
So they get a lot of personal attention, and I'm able to really focus my instruction and cater, what I talk about and whatever to each student, because sometimes I've got students that they just want to learn how to work on their own bike and they don't plan to be in the profession. Other students, of course, come from bike shops, and kind of want to have a little bit of a different angle or a different approach or whatever. So, so I'm able to really focus on each student's needs in a really personal way, and they love it. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's super good. I've taught plenty of tech clinics with my current and previous jobs, and I've been a guest teacher at the Trek Certified Service School before, and there's always that one person in class.
Right.
That's that sets the pace.
Right. Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
with a smaller group, not only do you have, a less of a bottleneck there, but you can also kind of engage those other students to kind of help that person too.
Right.
And kind of flex what they might already know and find their strong points out of that.
Totally. Yeah, the smaller the group, the less intimidation factor as well, right?
For sure.
And so I think the students really enjoy that, like, oh, they can kind of like after the first few minutes of introductions and stuff, kind of get a sense of where everybody is at, and it just kind of puts everybody at ease, So, and when you're at ease, you're more receptive to what you're going to learn,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, works out well all around.
Do you think that being located here in Western North Carolina and like a mountain bike destination offers anything to your students that maybe they wouldn't get at a different course?
Man, I'll tell you what, Asheville, she works for me.
Yeah.
Is how I feel about it, And it's funny, like I have to share this funny little story. When I first moved here in '97, my boyfriend at the time and we were in the public library downtown, making payphone calls to places to live and work job opportunities or whatever. We were camping out in Pisgah and just trying to like figure out how we were going to make a life here. And there was a guy that was in the hallway just hanging out, and he was like, what y'all doing, man? He was an islander, from somewhere in the Caribbean, and we were like, oh, we're looking to move here, we're just making phone calls. We had our little stack of quarters and whatever, and I'll never forget this. He was like, you want to move here to Asheville? Yeah, well, she very, very hard. She's very hard. Was what he was saying. She very, very hard. Hard to find job, hard to find place to live. She very, very hard. And this was back then. Like, imagine how hard people find it to live and move here and whatever these days with how housing has just gone out of control. But I'll never forget that, that he was telling me how hard Asheville is. And so when I started this school and things were going well, and I could tell it was going to be successful, I keep thinking, yeah, Asheville, she may be hard, but she work for me now.
Yeah.
Because that was part of my business plan, kind of the, background thinking was people want to come to Asheville. People want to come and ride bikes in Pisgah. People want to experience the culture and all the stuff that Asheville has to offer. So, yeah, I mean, people, when they come, they're like, well, I'll bring my family. I'll bring my wife or my husband or, whatever, and make a vacation out of it and, kind of get more out of it. So, yeah, Western North Carolina, mwah, love being here. Yeah.
Something special about it.
Yeah.
Well, I personally feel like a lot has changed in the bike industry in the past few years, maybe decade, but seems exacerbated in the past few years. And I was wondering if you see a shift in the bike shop culture from when you began doing these classes to now.
Well, I mean, I have to be a little bit honest about the fact that I can't fully answer that because I have not set foot in a bike shop. And, well, definitely not this past year because not many people have. With the COVID and stuff, there's a lot of restrictions on browsing and just being in a bike shop and stopping by and visiting friends or whatever, which I did, on occasion here and there after leaving the shop. But, I don't know. I mean, I think that there is maybe some more openness to diversity, like as far as like female mechanics, because like when I was working as a mechanic, I was the only one in town. I was the only one in Western North Carolina, as a mechanic, being a woman for many years. So, I think there's probably less of that, I don't know, whatever kind of prejudices or whatnot, because people are a little bit more used to seeing women mechanics. So from that perspective, I'm sure things have changed. I would like to think that there's more professionalism in the last however many years with bicycle mechanics, just because bike mechanics are in really high demand. You look at any of the trade, magazines or whatever, at the classifieds. I mean, there's people desperately looking for bike mechanics all over the country, and there's a lack. There's not a lot of super professional bike mechanics out there in the market. And part of that, I mean, there's only so long that you can be underpaid in a job before you realize you need to do something that pays better, so that you can think about things like retirement, or if you wanted to have children and start a family, or, any of like the normal life things that people with real jobs do, and I say that term real job with a little bit of a, wink or tongue in cheek, or whatever you want to call it. We joke about how being in a bike shop as a mechanic isn't really a real job. And that's a shame, because it is as much of a real job as far as the skill that's required to do a good job as being a doctor, or any other serious, job where people's lives depend on the quality of work that you do. So, and that kind of goes into why we founded the PBMA, is to try to change that culture. But I'm not sure, as far as culture, like how much it's changed, just because I haven't worked in a bike shop since 2012. So that's, holy cow, it's coming on 10 years nearly,
Right.
since I've worked in a bike shop. So it'd be interesting to me to know, maybe why you think it's changed so in any significant way in the last however many years. Like, what have you seen?
I guess in my point of view, and I haven't worked in a shop since 2007 myself, maybe early 2008 actually, but for me, the personnel at the shop are different now. I mean, I started as a teenager putting bikes together in the basement of the shop. Putting boxed bikes together for a flat rate under the table pay,
right?
And worked my way up from there. But it used to be you'd go to a bike shop and you had your mechanic that had been there for 10 years, and now quarterly it seems like there's new staff in the shop, and and people that are enthusiastic still, which is nice, but it seems like the burn-through rate seems to be a little quicker, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and I would say if that is the case, which I don't disagree, is probably because the level of skill required is I think it's a lot higher, and I think the demand for training and keeping up with the technology is way more than it was before.
Yeah, the continuing education is
huge.
is
huge.
Enormous. Yeah,
it's huge. Yeah, I mean, I would see that for sure. And I mean, I think also just the escalating price of living, the cost of living, like, for locally here in Asheville, for example, for a house to have quadrupled in cost over the last, 10 years is ridiculous. It's crazy. And I know it's not just Asheville, but I think a lot of folks who, would have the wherewithal or interest or whatever in being in the bike industry as a mechanic are seeing pretty quickly, like, holy cow, I can't do this, So, which is, again, like, such a shame, because it's a really satisfying, enjoyable line of work. I mean, if I could afford to still be a bike mechanic, I would totally still be doing it, because it's, every day is a new set of problem solving challenges, and, getting to interact with all kinds of people, and it's a fun job. I mean, it can be,
Yeah, that's why I always did it. It's new stuff every day.
Yeah.
There's monotony, but I think all jobs have that. But
Right.
The cool thing to me was getting to handle the things that I couldn't personally afford.
Right.
And get to pick it apart and learn
Yeah.
about it and
Yeah.
and rebuild it, and it was always just really engaging for me.
Yeah.
It was that was my draw to it for sure.
Yeah, no, totally. For somebody who's technically minded, I mean, I think the bicycle industry is way more dynamic than just about any other industry out there. You want to compare it to automotive or motorcycle or, any other like mechanical industry that's out there. Bikes have got everybody beat for how much innovation is going on at a just constant rapid level, So yeah, it's exciting.
I guess that's actually probably a good segue into talking about the PBMA. I know a little bit about it. I've been aware of it, and I knew James, the previous president, from I took the Bill Whittle course
Yeah.
back in probably 2012, I think. And I don't know. I just feel like I should know more about it. And I've got friends that are members. And I mean, I've done neutral support for USAC and UCI events. And I've been some sort of bicycle mechanic my entire working career. So tell me about it.
Yeah.
How would it benefit me? And
Yeah, well,
sell me on it, I guess.
So I would love to sell anybody on it. We need all the help we can get. Well, so it started with James. James is the big brain behind the whole operation, and he is a wonderfully experienced, intelligent. He's a fascinating human being, and I'm happy to call him a friend at this point after all our years of working together. But he invited me to come to the Bill Whittle Clinic back in 2014, actually, and that's how we met. And it was something that I had wanted to do because I'm all about continuing education. Any class or seminar or clinic or anything that I can take myself to, I'm there because, again, there's so much technology that's always changing, and in order to be good at what you do, you have to stay on top of it. So I had wanted to go to this thing, even though I wasn't interested in being a race mechanic. I just knew it was going to have a lot of good educational opportunities, and it's always fun to see how other instructors instruct too. So as a professional instructor, like that's another aspect of my continuing education. It's just how to be a better instructor is always, kind of a focus. But so I went, met James, and after that clinic, which I would highly recommend to anybody, we, the PBMA, are hopefully going to get that back on track. Of course, COVID derailed a bunch of gathering type events, but we're sort of in charge of it. But I was really inspired after 4.5 days of commingling with all of these greats and giants of the bike industry.
Yeah.
And so I had a couple of ideas that started kind of forming in my head. And one of those was to kind of restart what Park Tool had dropped, which was they had put on this thing called the Park Tool Tech Summit. And they did it for, I want to say 6 years or something like that. And it was one of these like traveling, regional kind of things. So, there will be a summit near you, at some point kind of thing. And I had gone to that a couple of times. What I experienced there, it was 2 days the way that Park did it. And they had 6 or 7 different big manufacturers that came and taught clinics, right? And the last one that I went to, which was the last year that they did it, I was a little disappointed leaving it just because it was somehow not quite up to the same level as the first one that I had gone to, for whatever reason, and nothing against Park Tool for the job that they did. It's just there's, I guess, only so much material that can be prepared and whatever else. So after leaving the Bill Whittle Clinic, I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could make all the connections that I have within the industry and do something like that, but make it better. So like a little more intensive, a little bit more rich on material. I was really interested in kind of getting a little bit more just general mechanic theory taught at these. So not necessarily like manufacturer specific stuff, but just kind of a little bit more general kind of stuff that I think any mechanic would be fascinated to learn and understand, materials and how threads stretch and just all these like detail kind of things that most mechanics don't really think about on a day-to-day level, in academic or whatever sense, but more of an intuitive sense. So like kind of understanding a little bit more of like the actuality of what goes behind, the physics of what we do, so a little bit more theory. I had some other ideas. So I shared them with James and told him I was really grateful for the opportunity to go to the clinic. And so we just kept in touch over the course of the following year. And it was in the early part of 2016, which was, a full year and, however many months after the Bill Whittle clinic that I went to in 2014, which was in November. He contacted me and was like, hey, I've got this project that I want your help on if you're interested. And I was like, whatever you're doing, James, I'm interested.
Right.
And so he presented this idea of starting a professional association for mechanics. And he drew in a number of other people that he knew really well and asked if they wanted to be a part of it. And so we slowly kind of formed this board of directors, which one of those people was me, and sort of started forming our mission statement and our plan and kind of what we wanted to achieve by creating this association. So we ended up with a mission statement which states that the organization exists to promote, develop, and advocate for the professional bicycle mechanic. So that in a nutshell is what we do. And why we do it is for some of the reasons we already talked about, is that there's a lack of mechanics in some respects. People would definitely argue that there's a lack of professionalism, and part of that kind of leads back towards, that it doesn't pay very well. So you're not going to be able to get really quality workers, if you're not paying well, and a lot of mechanics that I ever worked with, they did it as a passion project or something that they did for fun because they had a spouse that made all the money.
Sure.
Or I worked with mechanics that, almost literally lived in a van down by the river. So the whole idea with the PBMA and, what we've been preaching and talking about the whole time when we were getting started and going to our first Interbike events, with our little tiny booth and, whatever, is that we want to elevate the status of bicycle mechanics within the industry because we believe it will elevate the entire industry with it. So, the whole cliche of rising tide, lifts all ships kind of thing. So if we have better, more professional mechanics working in shops and we've got better responses from the customers that are going to those shops, better outcomes for those shops with the work that's done, and everything else. So that, is all kind of esoteric stuff, like what do we tangibly, materially offer to our members? Well, discounts, of course, all kinds of industry discounts on tools and all that kind of stuff, which, who doesn't love a little break? But as we developed as an organization, one of the things that we were interested in pursuing is the idea of certification. So our industry has not had really any kind of neutral certification program that doesn't have a tie to, either a manufacturer or to a school or whatever, right? So the idea of having a neutral certification program that is supported by the schools and supported by the manufacturers was something that we wanted to do. And so we worked on it and we made it happen. And so we have a 2-part certification program. The first part is online, a 50-question timed test. Many of those questions on the test I developed. We also worked with a school up in Canada. Pierre Griou, he is one of the instructors at a school up in Canada, and he helped with creating some of the questions as well. So then there is the practical test, which is basically building up a bike. So we worked with UBI to build us these jigs, which are basically like mini frames. And you have to set up a drivetrain, you have to set up a whole front end, and you have to basically create a working bicycle, minus the wheels. And it's also a timed test. And we watch the people who try to pass this test like hawks to make sure that everything that they do is done perfectly, right? So points are taken off for various, whatever. And the passing grade is 92.5%. And so, out of the however many people that we've tested, only about half have passed this practical test. And of course, with the online test, people can take it as many times as they need to until they finally pass it. But that's the ticket to take the next part of the test, which is the practical. So we were offering the practical tests at Interbike. That's where it launched. We were doing them at CABDA. We were doing them at our tech seminars, which is exactly what I was interested in doing, right? That kind of copy thing of Park Tools Tech Summit, but better, right? So that was the other thing that we were offering as an organization, were these continuing education events that were low cost. That was a real important aspect. We wanted to make sure that they were really accessible. We're a nonprofit. We're not trying to make money. None of us makes we don't pay ourselves to do this. It's all strictly volunteer. So
right.
It takes a lot of my time. I mean, I would say it's close to like a full-time job. But so we would offer the certifications at our tech seminars as well. But I'll say anybody who took the test, whether they passed or failed, had a lot of respect for the process and were really impressed with like, holy cow, you guys really are testing for proficiency and competence, and it's not just a piece of paper, and it's not something that's easy to achieve, so we really wanted it to reflect a higher level of competence with a real focus on safety, right? Really wanted to make sure that the test reflects how safely a bicycle can be put together, because again, people's lives are in our hands, right? So we want to make sure that people know what they're doing. So if you're PBMA certified, then it should mean something, it should matter. It's not just some piece of paper that people can tack on their wall because they checked a box off, Those are kind of like the main things that we do with the PBMA. And I would say that anybody who wants to support the PBMA hopefully will get the satisfaction from realizing that their support is what is going to make the industry better. So not just for mechanics, but for the entire industry. So we work pretty diligently with our board to make that happen. So.
Well, yeah, that sells me on it.
Yeah.
That being what a member would gain, what does the PBMA gain from my membership?
I mean, the numbers are the support, right? The more mechanics that show that they want to be a part of what we're doing gives more power to the whole movement, right? Of trying to create more professionalism. So, another thing that we did early on, and this was kind of just to create groundswell, if you will, was we started a page on Facebook, and love it or hate it, Facebook has a great power to bring people together, and it's a free, easy platform, very accessible. So what we did was we started this page, and we had our name in it, the PBMA's name in it, but we've since detached our name from it because of the factor of when you're trying to herd thousands of cats, and some of those cats are jerks, you kind of have to, I don't know, just do the best you can. So the name of the page is the World Bicycle Mechanic Forum, and it grew into this international forum of mechanics all over the world, where you can get a question answered within minutes in a number of different possible ways, right? There's a lot of different ways to tackle certain problems, but it has become an invaluable resource for mechanics. So for anybody out there that is working on bikes professionally that wants to be a part of this group, you just have to answer questions, right? Do you agree to the admin rules and all that kind of stuff? You have to be a professional mechanic, but say you run across something weird and you can't find an answer online, or you want it quick, or nobody you're working with knows the answer, whatever. Type that into that forum, and within 10 minutes, you'll get answers from all over the world. And the right answer, the best answer, is going to be in there. there's going to be some chaff that you have to
Yeah.
sift through, of course. There's a lot of dum-dums out there, but there's a lot of really, really good professional mechanics that stay on top of that forum, are happy to help, and they're nice about it, which is always a big plus. Like I said, it's an invaluable resource, and I'm pretty proud of having built that. With the PBMA, even though it doesn't have our name on it. And some of the big manufacturers, they hate it. They say there's a lot of bad information that goes around. But, what's the difference between talking to people, in the bike shop about stuff and being wrong about it versus, doing it on a global platform? I don't know how much of a difference that is. And if you're a professional, you know how to sift through that. Hopefully.
And I think one of the best ways to get the right information is to correct bad information.
Right. And there's plenty of that goes on too, right?
And if it's not getting corrected, there's not a forum to do so, then
right.
It keeps the bad information out there.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I'd like to think that it's been a really good educational resource for people all over. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
What about the future of PBMA? Anything coming up, or 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
Gosh, who knows? Bigger, better.
Yeah.
Stronger, faster. Well, so I have, being the current president, of course, I've got a lot on my plate. I've got huge, enormous shoes to try to fill after James. I'm happy to say, though, that James is at arm's length for me at all times.
Good.
So, and he's very much still, enthusiastically involved, as a member, of course. But one of the things I personally want to focus on, because I've had so many contacts with foreigners, is to expand our international outreach. So I've been contacted by a number of schools all over the world now who are really interested in aligning with the PBMA. So, that in itself to me says a lot, that we've sort of thrown ourselves out there and put together some work that has gotten enough attention that makes others want to align themselves with us and work with us and adhere to the standards that we're trying to set. So that's kind of my own, personal thing that I'm interested in pursuing in the coming years. But, trying to create more deliverables for our membership, so there's always going to be the people that are like, what's in it for me? What do I get for my $75 a year? Right? We want people to feel like it's worth it, that it's beyond just getting a pack of stickers and a, whatever, like discounts on tools. There needs to be more to it. Definitely hope to continue with trying to deliver quality education, because technical education, continuing education is a huge part of being a professional bicycle mechanic. So trying to be a facilitator for that, because of course all the manufacturers have their own educational programs and whatever else, but if we can act as a sort of clearinghouse or a concentrated resource for people, then they know they can just come to us and what do we have going on? Well, this is what we have going on. This will keep you updated. Of course, with certification, that's got to grow. We have our testing protocol set as a level 1 tier kind of program. So, there has to be a level 2 and a level 3 and, whatever for more advanced technical mechanical aspects of what we do. So, so there's that. I mean, I don't know, man, the list goes on and on.
Good. Glad to know it doesn't just stop with paying a due and
yeah,
that being it.
No. We're very much dedicated to trying to make sure that we're a valuable resource for mechanics and that people want to be a part of what we're doing, because like I've said from the very beginning, what we're doing is a noble effort, and I feel like in this life, what I feel most satisfied doing is serving others. And I do it with my school, it's, I love what I do, but holy moly, it's exhausting, it's exhausting to give of yourself for hours on end, for days on end, to multiple people, and give them as much as you can of your knowledge and your experience, and build that confidence for them and everything. It's exhausting. So, but it's satisfying, right? I wouldn't do it otherwise. So being of service is to me very important, and that's really the goal with the PBMA, is we want to be of service to mechanics and ultimately to the bike industry. So
I guess tell everybody where they can find you online, social media and whatnot.
yeah. So AppalachianBicycleInstitute.com. I know it's a little bit of a mouthful. And then same with the Instagrams and Facebook. It's, just Appalachian Bicycle Institute. And then, of course, with the PBMA, ProBMA.org is our website. And we have all the information on that website. We also have an Instagram handle and, of course, a Facebook page, Professional Bicycle Mechanics Association. And there's various groups. We have a mobile group. We have the World Bicycle Mechanic Forum, which we operate and mediate and administer. So it doesn't actually have the PBMA name associated with it, but we're behind it. There's the women's group. There's all different kinds of pages related. Job board as well, for people who are looking for jobs or for mechanics. We have that all also on Facebook pages. So they all have kind of their own individual pages, but pretty easy to search and find, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, man, thank you. Thank you so much for that opportunity as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
It's not really something that a lot of people think about, of how important bike mechanics are to your safety. I mean, we go blasting down trails at, 25 plus miles an hour, and all it takes is for like one little thing to be wrong on your bike that could end up being a dangerous situation.
Yeah, you're never very far from disaster when you're in rugged and rocky terrain, but making sure that your bike works correctly, or making sure that somebody else has made sure that your bike works correctly, is probably one of the first steps forward in making sure that you're safe.
So for this week's shout out, I would like to give a huge shout out to the Bicycle Thrift Shop. They have a donation box set up at Sycamore Cycles where you can drop off your used bike goodies.
Yeah, the Bicycle Thrift Shop is a pretty awesome operation. The shop itself is located in the Biltmore Village area in Asheville. Such a good group of people to support, and it's also a really good place to stop by if you need a part that's not critical to be new, or you need a piece of winter gear to wear to stay comfortable out on a ride, or even just to, give your general business to, because they're great people and they get youngsters out for rides, and they help get bikes into the hands of people that couldn't otherwise afford them.
That's something that everyone should really do their part to do, is help support the new and less funded generations.
Yeah, 10-4. So you got a weather outlook for us this week?
This week, the weather looks amazing. I'm talking about like the business day week here, the banker hours. So for you guys, including myself this week, that are working the Monday through Friday plus, you're going to miss out on some of that splinter early spring weather that we're having. But then the weekend looks a little wet. There's potentially going to be some dry areas, that you could get a ride in. But looking on the weather forecast, it shows rain chances of sorts Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then get nice again on Wednesday. And what I like about this forecast that I'm seeing is there's not freezing temperatures.
Yes, amen to that. I'm ready to not have frozen toes that I can't feel by the end of a ride.
Well, guys, that wraps up this week's show. As always, you can find us on the social media. We would appreciate sharing some of our posts, a story, or just comment on our stuff, spread the love.
And if you ever cut your chain too short, then click subscribe, share with your pals, and rate and review us on iTunes.
It is such a bummer when you realize that you cut your chain too short, because it's probably when you're telling them to drive away, you put away half the tools, and you're looking for a ride.
Yeah, that sucks, but it's also